You know, there's this unique kind of vulnerability that comes with working the night shift. The whole world just quiets down, the lights go dim, and all the familiar places you know from the daytime, they become strange and cavernous and just empty. Most of the time, you're the only one there. And in that silence, well, sometimes you can hear things you're not supposed to. You can see things that just don't belong. So, what you're about to hear are four different accounts, four case files from people who worked those quiet hours. These are stories about what happens when the normal routine of the night is shattered by something, well, something inexplicable, and a lot of the time, something absolutely terrifying.
Okay, so our first case comes from a guy named Thomas who was working the night shift at a local Burger King. For him, the job was pretty simple, the hours were fine, and honestly, the solitude was kind of peaceful. That is, until one particular customer turned his quiet routine into a total nightmare. It all kicked off with this simple but very strange act of generosity. Thomas actually started thinking of this mystery driver as some kind of, well, a benefactor. Somebody who, for whatever reason, would buy him dinner every few nights. But trust me, this was no act of kindness. The first time it happened, this car with super tinted windows pulls up to the drive-thru. A man's voice orders this exact meal. He pays, sliding his card through a tiny crack in the window, but then he just drove off. He never even stopped at the next window to get his food. Thomas just figured, hey, weird one-off, and ate the meal himself. Then, about a week later, it happens again. Same car, same voice, same exact order. And again, the driver pays and just leaves without his food. So now things are starting to shift from just a simple oddity to a pattern. Thomas thought it was just a bizarre coincidence, but that repetition, it was starting to plant this little seed of unease. The third time this happened, any idea of it being a coincidence was just shattered. Thomas knew for certain it was the same person. This wasn't random anymore. This was calculated. Someone was intentionally buying this food, knowing he wouldn't pick it up. The only question was, why? And this is the moment where everything changed. One night, after placing the usual order, the voice on the speaker says this. Thomas's last name is Hurley. He didn't wear a name tag with his full name on it. It wasn't posted anywhere. In a single instant, the strange benefactor became a stalker. The free meals became a terrifying message. I know exactly who you are. The fear followed him home. After that shift, he found this handwritten note sitting on his doorstep. The vague, menacing accusation was almost worse than a specific threat. What did I do? He's thinking. He was just a 24-year-old guy working at Burger King. He didn't have any enemies, no dark secrets. The randomness of it all was just sickening. The man came back the next night, but he wasn't ordering food. He gave Thomas an address on the edge of town and a new demand. Deliver $10,000 in 2 days. Thomas almost laughed, thinking, okay, this has to be a prank. He had no way of getting that kind of money, so he just decided to ignore it, hoping the whole thing would just go away. It didn't go away. 3 nights later, as he's unwinding at home, a rock comes crashing right through his window. The prank was real. The threat was now in his home. The police were called, but with no footage, no leads besides an address, there was very little they could do. He was trapped in this nightmare with no explanation and no clear way out. Okay, let's shift gears now to our second account. This one comes from a recent college grad who was driving for Uber to make some money. A late-night fare took him about 40 minutes outside the city, leaving him totally alone in the middle of nowhere for the long drive back. So I want you to put yourself in his shoes. It's past 2 a.m., you're on a dark, deserted road, miles from anything, and you see this up ahead. Your gut is screaming at you to keep driving, but your conscience is telling you to help. He chose to help, rolling his window down just a few inches to talk to the middle-aged couple standing there in the road. The woman started talking frantically, but her speech felt, weirdly rehearsed. She gave this urgent warning. They claimed they'd almost driven right off the collapsed bridge themselves. Their solution was this turnoff, a path that cut through the dark woods, but would supposedly get him back to the main highway safe and sound. Something just felt wrong about it. The driver thanked them and drove on, but he decided to trust his gut. He ignored their advice, drove right past that creepy dirt path they pointed out, and a few minutes later, he reached the bridge. It was perfectly intact, no damage, no collapse, nothing. They had lied. But why? That question haunted him so much that a few days later, he drove back out to that same spot in the middle of the afternoon. In the daylight, things looked different. The ominous path was really just a narrow dirt road. But he noticed one major change immediately. Nailed to a tree, right at the entrance to the path, was this sign. A freshly made sign that absolutely had not been there the night he met that couple. Someone had put it up very, very recently. His curiosity got the better of his fear, and he got out of his car to check it out on foot. He didn't get far. The moment he stepped out of his car, he felt this sense of dread wash over him. And as he turned to go back, this sound just ripped through the silence. It was a horrifying woman's scream, coming from somewhere deep down that path. He didn't wait around to find out what it was. He was in his car and speeding away before he could even process the terror. Our third case file takes us to an industrial park on the edge of a small city. The narrator was a 26-year-old security guard working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, completely alone in this massive warehouse complex. His job was simple: watch the cameras, do the patrols, and just stay awake. The night started out totally normally, but then the alerts began. It was always the same camera, camera 4, aimed at an empty loading dock. Each time an alert pinged, he'd check the feed and see nothing but falling snow. But the alerts just kept coming, the motion always seeming to happen right at the edge of the frame. After doing an exterior patrol that turned up nothing, he went back inside. That's when he heard it. Coming from deep within the warehouse, these sounds echoed through the whole building. He checked the interior cameras, but every single aisle was empty. He started to feel like he was being watched, being toyed with. An hour later, he heard the sounds again, but louder this time. He started cycling through the interior camera feeds. 1 through 5 were totally clear, but when he got to camera 6, the screen was just this, pure static. It only lasted for about 3 seconds before the picture came back. When the feed for camera 6 came back online, the image was different. The angle had been moved just a few degrees to the left, as if someone had physically bumped it or adjusted it. There was no longer any doubt in his mind. Someone was inside the warehouse with him. He had no choice but to go in. Flashlight in hand, he stepped into the massive, dimly lit space. Halfway down the main aisle, he heard footsteps from an adjacent aisle. When he stopped, the footsteps stopped. He called out, his voice just getting swallowed by the silence. Of course, there was no answer. He finished his patrol without seeing a single soul, which was somehow even more terrifying. He knew he wasn't alone. This brings us to our final, and maybe the most disturbing case file. It comes from a young employee working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour keycard gym. His job was mostly just to sit in the office and watch the cameras. It was a quiet, pretty boring shift, until one guest checked in. Around 2 a.m., he noticed a man on a treadmill in the far corner of the gym. What caught his attention was the speed. The system monitor showed he was running at 9 miles per hour. I mean, that's a full-on sprint. It was impressive, sure, but not totally unheard of. But then he kept watching. 10 minutes went by, then 15. The man never slowed down. He never showed any signs of getting tired. He just kept running at this relentless, almost machine-like pace. The narrator looked closer at the camera feed and felt this deep sense of unease. Peering at the monitor, the narrator realized why he felt so weirded out. The man wasn't wearing shoes. He was running a 9-mile-per-hour sprint for over 15 minutes, completely barefoot. The gym had a strict policy requiring shoes, so the employee knew he had to go out there and talk to him. As soon as he turned the corner out of the employee hallway, his heart just stopped. This is what he saw. The man's feet were literally tearing apart as he ran. Blood wasn't just dripping, it was splattering all over the machine and the floor with every single step. The man's face was completely emotionless, his mouth just hanging open as he ran, but he wasn't even panting. The narrator, meanwhile, was terrified, yelling over the constant thudding of the man's feet, trying to get him to stop. The man didn't turn his head. He didn't even seem to acknowledge the narrator at first. When he finally spoke, without breaking his stride, he just muttered these words in a cold, raspy voice. Over and over again, as the pool of blood got bigger, he just repeated, "Are you there?" The narrator backed away and went back to the office to call the police. Before dialing, he glanced one last time at the security monitor. The man was still running, still bleeding, but now he was staring directly into the camera, directly at him. And then all hell broke loose. The man let out a wordless scream, hopped off the treadmill, and sprinted out of view. The narrator frantically checked the other cameras and found him somehow in the locked employee hallway just feet from the office door. The doorknob began to rattle violently as a deep, inhuman scream tore through the door. The screaming went on for what felt like an eternity. And then it just stopped. Complete silence. When the police finally arrived, they searched the entire facility, which had been locked the whole time. They found the blood-soaked treadmill, but the man himself was gone. He had vanished without a trace.
These stories remind us that sometimes the quietest hours are the most dangerous. They leave us with this lingering question. When you're the only one awake, seeing things that nobody else does, who's going to believe you? And maybe more importantly, what happens when your shift is over, but the thing you saw in the dark decides to follow you home into the light?